The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such panic. Representatives from 100 worlds filled the massive chamber, their voices mixing into a noise that echoed off the crystal walls. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Kelvar. His blue skin pale with fear. Kelvar was a Centauri, and the Centauri were known across the galaxy as the healers. They built hospitals on dead worlds and brought medicine to the sick. They spoke of peace and understanding. They had never known war. Now war had found them. "Please," Kelvar said, his voice shaking. "My people are dying." The Vex came without warning. They hit our outer colonies first. Now they moved toward our home worlds. The chamber fell quiet. Everyone knew about the Vex. They were the nightmare that parents used to scare children into behaving. They took worlds and turned them into ash. They had been doing it for 1,000 years. "How many ships do they have?" asked Counselor Hex 9, a machine being from the Robot Collective. "Our scouts counted over 500 vessels," Kelvar replied. "They use weapons that break things apart at the smallest level. Our cities just dissolve." A sound like wind through metal came from the crystalline delegate. It was their way of showing fear. "The Vex have never attacked so far into Council space before. They grow bold," said the representative from the hegemony. "But this is not our concern. The Centauri are on the rim, far from our trade routes." Kelvar turned to face the hegemony delegate. "Counselor Marx, your people and mine have traded for 200 years. We have healed your sick, taught your children. Does that mean nothing?" Marx looked away. "The hegemony cannot risk war with the Vex. Our economy would collapse." One by one, the great powers of the galaxy made their excuses. The Hive Mind Union ran calculations and found intervention would cost more than they could gain. The Star Kingdom worried about their borders with hostile neighbors. The Federation of Free Worlds simply voted to stay neutral. Kelvar watched his hopes die with each refusal. His people had 30 worlds, 50 billion souls. The Centauri had built beautiful cities of crystalline light. They had libraries that held the knowledge of ages. They had gardens where flowers from 1,000 worlds bloomed together. All of it would be dust within a year. "There must be someone," Kelvar pleaded. "Anyone who will help us." The chamber was quiet except for the soft hum of the translation devices. Then Counselor Webb spoke up. She was from the Terran Collective, one of the newest species to join the Council. "What about the humans?" she asked. Several delegates looked confused. "The humans?" asked Marx. "Who are they?" "They joined us 50 years ago," Webb explained. "They come from a world called Earth, out on the galactic rim. Their planet is mostly water." "I remember them," said Hex 9. "They sent a small ship to make first contact. Very primitive technology. Chemical rockets and metal hulls." The chamber filled with the sound of alien laughter. The idea that such a young species could help seemed impossible. "Wait," said Kelvar. "I remember something about them." "Were they not the ones who asked many questions about warfare during their entry interviews?" Webb nodded. "Yes, they wanted to know about galactic military law, rules of engagement, weapons, restrictions. They seemed very interested in those topics. Probably trying to make sure they would not accidentally break any rules," Marx said with amusement. "Young species often worry about such things." "They also asked about something called the Geneva Convention," Webb continued. "They wanted to know if we had similar laws about treating prisoners and protecting civilians." "How quaint," said the crystalline delegate. "They must be very peaceful people to worry so much about proper conduct in war." Kelvar felt a small spark of hope. If they understand military law, perhaps they have some defense forces. Even a few ships would help. The council debated for another hour, but it was clear that no major power would act. Finally, they agreed to send the standard humanitarian aid request to Earth. It was a simple message asking for medical supplies and refugee assistance. Do not expect much, Marx warned Kelvar. They are very new to space. Their technology is crude. They probably have a few patrol boats at most. The message was prepared and sent through the Galactic Communication Network. It would take 3 days to reach Earth. The text was simple. Humanitarian crisis in Centauri space. Medical aid and refugee assistance requested. Please coordinate with local authorities for delivery. As the council session ended, Kelvar stood alone in the great hall. Through the crystal walls, he could see the lights of the council station. Ships from 100 worlds came and went, carrying trade goods and messages across the galaxy. None of them would come to help his people. He thought about his home world, with its floating cities and singing gardens. He thought about his daughter, who had just started her medical training. He thought about the children in the schools, learning about the beauty of peace. The Vex would be there in 6 months. Without help, it would all be over. Kelvar activated his personal communicator and sent a message to the Centauri government. Council will not act. Have requested aid from humans. Do not expect much. Prepare for the worst. 3 days later, Earth received the message. What happened next would change the galaxy forever. But as Kelvar walked back to his quarters that night, he did not know that the species he had dismissed as primitive was about to teach everyone what the word aid really meant. The message from the Galactic Council arrived at Earth's Deep Space Communication Center on a quiet Tuesday morning. Lieutenant Commander Ben Walsh was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee when the alien transmission came through the quantum relay. Walsh read the message twice, then called his superior. Within an hour, the message sat on the desk of Admiral Jack Morrison at Pacific Fleet Command. Morrison was 62 years old and had seen more battles than he cared to remember. His hair was gray, his face lined with scars from the Mars colony. Wars. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and rebels on the moons of Jupiter. He knew what war looked like. The intelligence report that came with the Centauri message made his blood run cold. The Vex had wiped out entire star systems. Billions of innocent people had died in ways that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Captain Park, Morrison called to his aide. Get me the Joint Chiefs, emergency meeting in 1 hour. Captain. Lisa Park had served under Morrison for 5 years. She knew that tone in his voice. Someone was about to have a very bad day. The meeting room in the Pentagon was full within the hour. General Robert Kane from the Army sat across from Admiral Sarah Fox of the Space Navy. Air Force General Mike Torres reviewed the tactical data on his tablet. Gentlemen, ladies, Morrison began, we have a situation. The Centauri Federation has asked for humanitarian aid. They are facing complete extinction. He activated the holographic display. Images of burning worlds filled the air above the table. Cities turned to slag. Refugee ships destroyed as they tried to escape. Good God, whispered General Kane. How many dead? Conservative estimate. 20 billion so far, Morrison replied. The Vex are not just conquering, they are exterminating. Admiral Fox leaned forward. What kind of aid are they requesting? Medical supplies. Refugee assistance. The standard humanitarian package. Morrison's voice was flat. They think we are going to send hospital ships. That is what they asked for, General Kane pointed out. We should send what we can. Maybe some supply ships with medical teams. Morrison stood up and walked to the display. He touched a control, and the image changed to show Earth's current military assets. Hundreds of ships floated in the hologram. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, dreadnoughts. Tell me, General, Morrison said quietly, if your neighbor's house was burning down and his children were trapped inside, would you bring a fire extinguisher or a fire truck? I would bring everything I had, Kane replied. Exactly. Morrison turned to face the room. The Centauri did not ask for a fire extinguisher. They asked for aid. We are going to give them exactly what they need. Within 6 hours, Earth's response began to take shape. Admiral Morrison would personally lead the mission aboard the dreadnought USS Independence. The ship was the pride of Earth's fleet, nearly 2 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to crack a moon. The rest of the 7th Fleet would follow. 12 battle cruisers, their hulls thick with armor plating. 30 destroyers, fast and deadly. 40 corvettes for screening and reconnaissance. The massive carrier USS Vengeance would provide fighter support. Captain Danny, Wright of the destroyer USS Thunderbolt, received his orders at 0800 hours. He had been expecting a routine patrol mission. Instead, he found himself preparing for humanity's first major military action beyond the solar system. "Sir," asked his navigation officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, "are we really going to fight aliens?" "Right." Looked at the tactical briefing spread across his desk. The Vex had weapons that could dissolve matter at the molecular level. Their ships were fast and heavily armed. They had been conquering worlds for 1,000 years. "Yes, Lieutenant," he said, "we are going to fight aliens. And we are going to win." The fleet's preparation took 3 days. Supply ships loaded ammunition, food, and spare parts. Engineers checked every system twice. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Admiral Morrison walked through the USS Independence one final time before departure. The ship was ready for war. Her magazines were full of nuclear warheads and kinetic kill vehicles. Her armor was fresh from the yards. Her crew was trained and eager. In the ship's chapel, he found Commander Bill Murphy, the ship's chaplain, holding a prayer service. 50 sailors filled the small room. "Lord," Murphy was saying, "we go into the darkness to bring light. We carry violence so that others may know peace. Guide our hands and guard our souls." Morrison did not consider himself a religious man, but he found himself saying "Amen" along with the rest. The fleet launched at 0600 hours on Friday morning. One by one, the ships activated their hyperspace drives and vanished into the void. Earth's most powerful military force was heading to war. At the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Kelvar waited for news. 3 days had passed since Earth received the message. He expected to hear about a small convoy of medical ships, if anything at all. Instead, his communication device exploded with emergency signals from Council intelligence. Ships were moving in Earth's system. Big ships. Warships. "Impossible," said Counselor Marks when he heard the reports. "Earth does not have a military fleet. They are farmers and merchants." The intelligence officer, a nervous young being from the Surveillance Guild, checked his data again. "Sir, our sensors are very clear. 54 military vessels have left Earth's solar system. They are heading for Centauri space at maximum speed." Marks's face went pale. 54 ships? "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. And sir, these are not patrol boats. Our analysis shows multiple capital ships. The largest is over 2 kilometers long." Across the galaxy, military commanders scrambled to understand what was happening. Earth, the quiet farm world on the galactic rim, had just launched the largest military fleet seen in decades. In his quarters, Kelvar received a message from Earth. It was short and simple. "Aid is coming. Prepare your people for evacuation from border worlds. Estimate arrival in Centauri space in 72 hours. For the first time in weeks, Kelvar allowed himself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, his people would survive. He had no idea that Earth's definition of aid was about to rewrite the rules of galactic warfare. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Centauri territory, like thunder breaking the silence. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Independence, watching the tactical display update with grim data. Serenity Station had been the pride of the Centauri border worlds, a beautiful crystal city that floated in space, home to 2 million souls. Now it was debris scattered across thousands of kilometers. "Captain Park," Morrison said quietly, "launch search and rescue." Operations, find any survivors. Yes, sir, Park replied, then paused. Sir, we are picking up escape pod signals, dozens of them. Get them aboard, priority 1. As the human ships spread out to collect survivors, they got their first real look at what the Vex had done. The escape pods held families, children, elderly Zentari who had fled their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Dr. Helen Carter, the fleet's chief medical officer, worked in the Independence's sick bay as the survivors were brought aboard. The Zentari were a gentle people, tall and thin with blue skin and large eyes. They looked at the humans with wonder and fear. Where did you come from? Asked one elderly Zentari woman as Dr. Carter treated her injuries. Earth, Carter replied. Simply, we came to help, but you are so far away. Why would you come? Carter looked at the woman's face, at the hope struggling against despair, because someone had to. On the bridge, Captain Danny Wright of the destroyer USS Thunderbolt reported in. Admiral, we have contact with Vex forces. A raider squadron is chasing civilian ships in Sector 7. Morrison's jaw tightened. Intercept and engage, Captain. Protect those civilians. Understood, sir. Moving to intercept. The Thunderbolt was a lean, dangerous ship built for one purpose. As it accelerated toward the fleeing Zentari vessels, its crew prepared for humanity's first battle with alien enemies. Captain Wright had fought pirates and rebels, but never creatures from another world. As the Vex ships came into view on his display, he felt a chill. They were ugly things, all angles and spikes, like someone had turned a nightmare into metal. This is Vex Raider Leader Krax, came a harsh voice over the communication channel. Unknown vessels, you will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Wright looked at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Joe Barnes. Barnes was 25 years old and had joined the Navy to see the stars. Now he was about to see war. Open a channel, Wright ordered. Channel open, sir. Wright's voice was calm and cold. This is Captain Daniel Wright of the United Earth Fleet. You are attacking civilian vessels. Withdraw immediately, or we will consider you hostile. The alien laughter that came back sounded like metal grinding against metal. Earth? Never heard of it. You have 30 seconds to run home, little humans, before we add your ships to our collection. Wright looked at his weapons officer, Lieutenant Kate Sullivan. She was ready, her hands steady on the controls. All ships, Wright said over the fleet channel. Weapons free. Engage. The Thunderbolt's railgun spoke first. The magnetic accelerators hurled tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The projectiles hit the lead Vex Raider and punched clean through its hull. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness. Direct hit, reported Sullivan. Target destroyed. The other Vex ships opened fire with their molecular dissolution weapons. Green beams lanced out toward the human destroyers. But the beams that could eat through Zentari crystal barely scratched the Thunderbolt's armor. Human ships were built to survive. Their hulls were layered with materials designed to stop everything from lasers to nuclear explosions. The Vex weapons, deadly to most galactic species, were just another challenge to overcome. Return fire, Wright ordered. All weapons. The Thunderbolt and her sister ships unleashed hell. Railguns, particle beams, missile pods, and nuclear warheads filled the space between the fleets. The Vex, expecting another easy victory, found themselves facing an enemy that fought like no other species they had encountered. The human ships did not run or try to outmaneuver their enemies. They charged straight at the Vex formation, their weapons blazing. It was a tactic born from humanity's long history of warfare. When facing a superior foe, attack so aggressively that they cannot react. My God, whispered Lieutenant Barnes as he watched the tactical display. We are actually winning. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Vex Raider squadron was destroyed. The human ships had taken damage but remained operational. Behind them, The Centauri civilian vessels continued their escape. All Vex vessels destroyed, reported Sullivan. No survivors detected. Wright opened a channel to the fleeing civilians. Centauri vessels, this is the Earthship Thunderbolt. You are safe now. We will escort you to the refugee convoy. The response came in a voice thick with emotion. Earth. Ship. We do not understand. Why did you come? We are nothing to you. Wright thought about that question as his ship formed up with the civilian convoy. Why had they come? Earth had nothing to gain from this fight. The Centauri had no resources humanity needed, no strategic value. Because it was the right thing to do, he said finally. News of the battle spread quickly through Vex communication networks. War leader Thax, commander of the Vex invasion force, read the reports with growing anger. Impossible, he snarled. No species fights like this. They charged our guns directly. What kind of madness is this? His aide, a smaller Vex, named Kex, cowered before his commander's rage. Sir, perhaps they are desperate. A dying species making a final gesture. Then we will help them die faster, Thax decided. Ready Battle Group Talon. 50 heavy cruisers and their escorts. We will crush these humans and show the galaxy what happens to those who interfere with the Vex. But as Battle Group Talon prepared for departure, intelligence reports continued to arrive. The human fleet was not running. Instead, they were forming defensive positions around the Centauri refugee convoys. More disturbing were the analysis reports of human weapons. The materials scientists could barely believe what they were seeing. Human armor was a composite of metals and ceramics that should not have been possible to manufacture. Their weapons operated on principles that pushed the boundaries of physics. Sir, Kex said carefully, perhaps we should request reinforcements. Thax's eyes glowed red with fury. We are the Vex. We have conquered 47 species across 3 galactic arms. We do not run from primitives who barely know how to leave their own star system. Within hours, Battle Group Talon was underway. 50 of the Vex Empire's most powerful warships, supported by twice that number of escorts and support vessels. It was a force that had broken the defenses of entire civilizations. Admiral Morrison received the intelligence reports about the approaching Vex fleet with grim satisfaction. The enemy was coming to him, which meant he could choose the battlefield. Signal the fleet, he ordered. All ships to defensive positions around the refugee convoy. We make our stand here. Captain Park looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy force. Sir, they outnumber us 3-1. Morrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Captain, they have no idea what they are about to face. Battle Group Talon arrived at Serenity Station, expecting to find scattered human ships running for their lives. Instead, they found the entire Earth fleet arranged in perfect battle formation. Waiting, War Leader Thax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human ships were not hiding behind asteroids or trying to escape. They hung in space like a wall of metal and death, protecting the long column of Centauri refugee ships behind them. This is impossible, Thax growled. No species stands and fights against superior numbers. They should be fleeing. His communications officer, a nervous young Vex named Pex, looked up from his console. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet. Put it through. The main screen flickered and Admiral Morrison's face appeared. The human looked older than most species when they reached command rank, his hair gray and his face marked with scars. But his eyes were sharp and cold. This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Earth Fleet, Morrison said calmly. You have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw from Centauri space before we consider you hostile combatants. Thax laughed, the sound echoing through his ship's bridge. Surrender now, primitive, and your deaths will be swift. We are the Vex Empire. We have crushed worlds before your species learned to make fire. Morrison's expression did not change. Negative, the channel closed. For a moment, both fleets hung motionless in space. Then Morrison's voice echoed across all human frequencies. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. The enemy has chosen their path. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent people. All weapons fire at will." The Battle of Serenity Station began with a sound like the universe tearing apart. The USS Independence opened fire first. Her main guns, massive rail cannons that could punch holes through small moons, sent tungsten penetrators screaming across space at 20% of light speed. The projectiles hit the Vex flagship and carved through its armor like it was paper. But that was just the beginning. Every human ship in the fleet opened fire at once. Particle beams that could slice through asteroid belts. Nuclear missiles that turned space into miniature suns. Kinetic kill vehicles that hit with the force of natural disasters. The Vex had expected another easy victory like all the others. Instead, they faced weapons designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. "Return fire!" Thax screamed as his ship shook under the human bombardment. "Destroy them all!" The Vex fleet responded with their molecular dissolution weapons, the terrible green beams that had destroyed so many civilizations. But the humans had studied the weapon signatures from earlier battles. Their armor was specifically designed to resist molecular disruption. Where Zentari crystal had melted like ice, human composite armor held. Where other species' ships had dissolved, the human vessels pressed forward. Captain Amy Foster commanded the cruiser USS Defiant. She watched her tactical display as the two fleets closed on each other. The Vex were trying to use their superior numbers to surround the human formation. "Not today," Foster muttered. She opened a channel to her crew. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We are going to show these aliens how humans fight." Her navigation officer, Lieutenant Sam Clark, looked at her in shock. "Ma'am, ramming? Are you sure?" "Lieutenant, my grandfather fought at the Battle of Earth during the Colony Wars. He told me that sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to sacrifice everything." Foster's voice was steady. "Today we sacrifice so that others may live." The Defiant broke formation and accelerated directly toward the largest Vex dreadnought. Her engines pushed past safe limits, her hull groaning under the stress. As she closed the distance, her guns never stopped firing. The Vex dreadnought tried to turn away, but the Defiant was too fast. Foster's ship struck the alien vessel amidships, her reinforced prow punching through armor and bulkheads. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the refugee convoy. But Foster's sacrifice was not in vain. The destruction of the Vex dreadnought broke a hole in their formation that the other human ships exploited ruthlessly. On the Independence, Admiral Morrison coordinated the battle with cold precision. "Captain Wright, take your destroyers through that gap. Hit their command ships." "Understood, Admiral," came Wright's voice over the communications. The Thunderbolt and her sister ships darted through the opening like sharks smelling blood. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fought with a ferocity that defied logic. When their weapons ran low, they used their ships as weapons. When their armor failed, they rammed enemy vessels. When their engines died, they detonated their reactors to take nearby enemies with them. Lieutenant Nick Hayes led a boarding party from the cruiser USS Hammer onto a Vex command ship. The corridors were built for creatures twice human size, but Hayes and his Marines adapted quickly. "Remember your training," Hayes told his squad as they fought room by room through the alien vessel. "These things have been killing innocent people for 1,000 years. Today, we send them a message. The Vex warriors they encountered were larger and stronger than humans, but they had never faced enemies who fought with such determination. Human Marines, enhanced with genetic modifications and powered armor, pressed forward even when wounded. When Hayes' squad was pinned down by superior firepower, he made a decision that would be remembered in Earth's military history. Loading his remaining explosives into his armor's power pack, he charged the enemy position alone. "Tell my family I kept my promise," he said over the radio, then detonated the explosives. The blast cleared the way for his squad to advance, but Hayes did not survive to see the victory dot as the battle continued. The Vex began to understand what they were truly fighting. These humans did not retreat. They did not surrender. They fought until they won, or until they died. Captain Bill Murphy of the cruiser USS Relentless found himself facing 3 Vex heavy cruisers at once. His ship was damaged, his weapons running low on ammunition. Any sane commander would have withdrawn. Murphy was not feeling particularly sane. "All power to forward guns," he ordered. "We are going to take as many of these bastards with us as we can." The Relentless charged into the enemy formation, her guns blazing. She took terrible damage, but she kept fighting. When her main weapons failed, she used her point defense guns. When those ran out of ammunition, she used her engines as weapons, ramming the nearest enemy ship. Murphy's ship died, but so did all 3 Vex cruisers. After 18 hours of continuous battle, the Vex fleet began to break. War leader Thax watched in horror as his supposedly invincible armada was torn apart by a force less than half its size. "Sir," Pex reported, his voice shaking, "we have lost 60% of our ships. The humans... they just keep coming." Thax looked at the tactical display. The human fleet, though battered, still held their defensive line. Behind them, the Zentari refugees were safe. "Impossible," he whispered. "No species fights like this." "What are they?" His answer came from an unexpected source. A Zentari transmission on an open channel, broadcast from one of the refugee ships. "They call themselves human," the voice said. "They come from a world so dangerous that everything there tries to kill everything else. They are Deathworlders, war leader, and they have come to protect us." For the first time in his long military career, Thax felt fear. The Vex Empire had conquered 47 species, but they had never faced anything like this. "Signal the fleet," he ordered quietly. "Withdraw to safe distance." As the surviving Vex ships pulled back, Admiral Morrison's voice echoed across the battlefield one final time. "This system is now under Earth protection. Any further attacks on Zentari civilians will be met with the full force of the human fleet." That is not a threat. That is a promise. The Battle of Serenity Station was over. The galaxy would never be the same. News of humanity's victory at Serenity Station spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly wanted to know everything about these Deathworlders, who had stopped the Vex Empire cold on the Zentari home. World of Haven, Prime Minister Velkera stood before the Planetary Council with tears in her large blue eyes. For the first time in months, she could tell her people that some of their colonies were safe. "The humans have saved us," she announced to the packed assembly hall. "But their Admiral Morrison has warned us that the Vex will return with greater numbers. We cannot expect these brave souls to fight our battles alone." In the council chamber, old voices raised in protest. Councillor Darnell, nearly 300 years old, spoke for many when he said, "We are Zentari. We are healers, teachers, builders. We do not make war." "Then we will die," Velkera said simply. "Because the Vex do make war, and they will not stop until every one of us is dead." Meanwhile, aboard the USS Independence, Admiral Morrison met with his surviving captains. The human fleet had paid a heavy price for victory. 8 ships had been destroyed, including Captain Foster's heroic Defiant. Over 3,000 human sailors and Marines would never see Earth again. Captain Bill Murphy, who had somehow survived the destruction of his ship when his crew evacuated him against his orders, sat with his arm in a medical brace. "Admiral, we hurt them badly, but they will be back. The Vex Empire has thousands of ships," Morrison nodded grimly, "which is why we need to do something that has never been done before. We need to teach the Zentari how to fight. The idea horrified many of the Zentari leaders. When Morrison presented his plan to Prime Minister Valkera, she recoiled as if he had suggested poisoning their children. "Admiral, you ask us to become monsters," she said. "The Zentari have never taken life. It goes against everything we believe." Morrison looked out the window of the Zentari government building at the beautiful crystal spires of their capital city. Gardens hung between the towers, filled with flowers from 100 worlds. Children played in floating parks while their parents worked in laboratories and libraries. "Ma'am," Morrison said quietly, "I am not asking you to become monsters. I am asking you to survive. Sometimes the only way to protect peace is to be ready for war." The debate raged for days across the Zentari space. Some colonies refused to consider the human proposal. Others, closer to Vex territory, began volunteering immediately. The first training camp was established on the moon of Haven. Captain Danny Wright, promoted after his heroic actions at Serenity Station, took charge of converting Zentari civilians into soldiers. "This is a weapon," Wright said to a group of 50 Zentari volunteers, holding up a standard Earth military rifle. "It fires projectiles at high velocity designed to stop an enemy permanently. Does anyone have a problem with this?" A young Zentari named Texvel raised his hand. "Captain Wright, my people heal. We do not harm. How can we use tools of death?" Wright set down the rifle and looked at the group. "Because if you do not learn to use them, the Vex will use their tools to kill everyone you have ever loved. Your choice is simple: learn to fight or watch your children die." The training was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human Marines taught gentle Zentari how to strip, clean, and fire weapons their species had never imagined. Engineers showed them how to retrofit their beautiful ships with armor plating and gun turrets. Dr. Helen Carter found herself teaching Zentari medics how to treat battlefield wounds. "The human body can survive damage that would kill most species," she explained to her students. "But we had to learn how because we spent thousands of years hurting each other." The psychological transformation was even more dramatic. The Zentari had to learn concepts that were foreign to their peaceful nature: tactics, strategy, the willingness to kill to protect others. Lieutenant Sam Clark, who had survived the ramming of the Defiant, worked with Zentari ship designers. "Your vessels are beautiful," he told them, "but beauty will not stop Vex weapons. We need to make them stronger." The new Zentari warships that emerged from their shipyards 6 months later were still elegant, but now they bristled with human weapons. Crystal spires had been replaced with armor plating. Meditation gardens had become ammunition storage. When the Vex returned, they brought their main fleet. Supreme War Leader Krex commanded over 300 ships, including massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets. He expected to find the small human fleet alone and unsupported. Instead, he found a combined human Zentari armada waiting for him at the edge of Zentari space. "This is impossible," Krex snarled as he reviewed the intelligence reports. "The Zentari do not fight. They are pacifists." His aide, War Leader Thax, survivor of the first battle, shook his head. "Not anymore, Supreme Leader. The humans have changed them." The final battle took place near the beautiful world of Crystal Falls, where the Zentari had built their greatest university. Admiral Morrison, now commanding from the joint human-Zentari dreadnought Unity, coordinated the defense alongside Prime Minister Valkera. "All ships," Morrison announced, "protect the innocent. Show no mercy to those who would harm them." The Zentari captains, their voices steady despite their fear, responded in unison: "For our children, for our future." The battle was larger and more brutal than Serenity Station. The Vex threw everything they had at the defenders, but they faced an enemy that combined human military skill with Zentari determination to protect their homes. Captain Kate Sullivan, now commanding the destroyer USS Hurricane, discovered during the battle that the Vex flagship had a critical weakness in its molecular dissolution weapons. The weapon system could be overloaded if hit with a specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation. "Admiral," she reported, "I can disable their main weapon, but I need to get close, very close." Morrison understood what she was asking. "Do it, Captain. We will cover you." The Hurricane accelerated toward the massive Vex flagship, dodging weapons. Fire from a dozen enemy ships. Sullivan's crew worked frantically to modify their electromagnetic pulse generator, while enemy fire tore chunks from their hull. "We are not going to make it," reported her weapons officer. "Yes, we are," Sullivan said firmly, "because we have to." The Hurricane struck the Vex flagship with her modified weapon just as the ship's reactor went critical. Both vessels vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. But the Vex fleet's coordination collapsed without their command ship. Supreme War Leader Krex, commanding from a secondary vessel, watched his mighty armada break apart under the combined human-Zentari assault. For the first time in Vex history, they were not just losing a battle, they were being completely defeated. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Full retreat." As the surviving Vex vessels fled into hyperspace, Krex sent one final message to the defenders. "This system is forbidden. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the Deathworlders have claimed it." 6 months later, Ambassador Kelvar stood once again before the Galactic Council. But this time, he was not alone. Admiral Morrison stood beside him, representing the new Terran-Zentari alliance. "Honored Council," Kelvar said. "We asked for aid, and Earth sent us something better. They sent us teachers. They taught us that sometimes, peace must be protected by those willing to do violence." Morrison's voice was calm as he addressed the assembled delegates. "Earth claims no territory, demands no tribute. We ask only that the galaxy remember this lesson. When the innocent call for help, someone must answer." On the rebuilt world of Serenity Station, human and Zentari children played together in gardens that grew between memorial walls, honoring the fallen. Overhead, joint patrol fleets kept watch against the darkness. The Zentari had learned to fight, but they had not forgotten how to heal. The humans had taught them war, but the Zentari had taught the humans something in return, that the greatest victory was not the destruction of enemies, but the protection of those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy was a safer place, not because war had ended, but because some beings were willing to pay the price for peace.